In 2007, Arkane Studios released its sci-fi first person shooter Prey on Xbox One, PS4, and PC. The game was built as a spiritual successor to what is generally regarded as one of the best games of all time, System Shock. Despite being published by the gaming powerhouse BioWare and receiving generally favorable reviews across the board, the game seemed to have an extremely short lifespan. By the time I'm putting this video together in 2022, Prey has essentially disappeared from the zeitgeist. When this game first came out, I definitely didn't buy it. I might have rented it, but I know I didn't complete it. So this will essentially be a fresh playthrough for me. I'll be going through the story as well as my thoughts as I'm going through, so consider this your spoiler warning. We start out here with a character select of a male or female Morgan Yu, with no customization. I assume because we'll have some pre-rendered cutscenes at some point, but I don't really care because this is a first-person shooter. After this, the game starts with us waking up in a futuristic apartment with our brother Alex Yu calling and asking us to come in for some tests. I head upstairs and get into a private chopper that takes us to the TranStar facility.
Mr. Yu, please make yourself comfortable and we'll be on our way.
This in-game flight scene serves as the opening credits, as well as a bit of a mood setter, and honestly, I really dig it. It's really cool seeing, the BioWare logo superimposed into the futuristic background. Landing and making our way into the labs, our brother Alex Yu greets us. I know this game is only 5 years old, but the character models look pretty solid on my PC on max settings. So now we take a series of in-game tests that don't seem to be working very well. I'm definitely getting a bit of a Fallout Vault vibe right now, with one of the scientists asking me to do various pointless tasks. At the end, a doctor makes a remark about his coffee, only to have the black blob jump out and rip the flesh off of his face. At this point, Morgan passes out. We wake up again in our bed, and everything pretty much looks the exact same until we walk out into the hall. I grab a wrench off the ground, and some guy named January calls me and says that I'm in trouble and need to escape. Well, no shit. It looks like the only way out of here is off my balcony, but when I smash the glass, I find that it's actually a giant video screen. My apartment is some sort of Truman Show studio with a bunch of cameras everywhere. So yeah, this is actually a lot more like a Fallout Vault than I knew. And it turns out even that helicopter ride wasn't even real. January here tells me that those black blobs that kill the doctor are called mimics and can take the shape of anything nearby. This is actually a really super cool mechanic that I'm not sure I've ever encountered in a different video game. So by this time, in essentially what's the tutorial, I've been shown a bit more of the game mechanics. I can pick up parts, probably for crafting later on. I can interact with computers to read emails and find out passwords, collect usable items from lockers and corpses, the standard first-person shooter RPG stuff. I also get something called a Neuromod, which is essentially a perk point. I can use this to put points into the scientist, engineer, or security trees. So like I do in every game, I pick the lockpick hacking style perks. And then I use this sucker to give myself some sort of amateur LASIK surgery, which is really fucking gross. And now we move on to Talos 1. Entering the Talos 1 door, I realize that I'm actually already on the space station, and we get a nice view of Earth. I can also see an asteroid or something has hit part of the space station because there's dead bodies floating around outside. January calls Morgan and tells me to go to my office, so apparently I have an office here, and watch some sort of movie. The quest marker updates, and on the way up I see some auto turrets mowing down an army of mimics. So it looks like there's a lot of aliens here. On the way up to Morgan's office, I actually notice a bunch of locked doors leading to different areas, and then I pick up a few key cards, which this kind of leads me to believe that if this is an open world game, this is kind of how they're going to keep me on a linear path by blocking things behind locked doors that I need to find key cards for. So up in Morgan's office, we find the video that we're supposed to watch on our computer. Turning on the video actually opens up a giant ass TV right behind us, and we find out that the video is actually recorded by Morgan in the past. It turns out that the folks on this space station were actually experimenting with what's called the Typhon, which are those big black aliens, to create a new class of those Neuromods. A side effect of those Neuromods is whenever you take the Neuromod out, you lose all of your memory up from the point where you put the Neuromod on in the first place. So basically what's been happening is our brother Alex has been forcing us to relive the same day over and over again by putting in mods and then taking them out every morning. which is a pretty dick move. At this point, Morgan is just about to tell us what we're supposed to do or something bad's going to happen, and our brother Alex jumps in and says, "Hey, before you do anything, I need to talk to you in person," and cuts out our video feed right before past Morgan can tell us something important. It turns out that our friend January is actually a robot, so January now tells us maybe we can get the video back up and running if we go down to Dr. Calvino's workshop in the hardware labs. He might have something that might get everything going again. Also in Morgan's office, I'm introduced to a few more game mechanics. I have an upgrade kit that allows me to increase some of the stats on my weapons. I'm also introduced to a fabricator and recycler, which is basically I can find recipes out in the world and then use the fabricator to turn basic components into something that we want, like a weapon or a med kit. And the recycler basically does the opposite. I can take stuff that I don't want and turn it into those basic components. So it's pretty much your standard crafting system here. Heading into the workshops, I find a sweet silenced pistol on the way. The first thing that happens is I get attacked by a flying robot. So apparently not only do I have crazy aliens to fight, but the automated security forces of the satellite itself are going to get involved. A little further in, there's a security station with some grenades, ammunition, and a computer. The computer uploads the area map, and then it also shows me the entire station personnel list and statuses. It also looks like some of the people on the station are still alive, so maybe I'd like to interact with them later. Now I get to fight my first of these phantoms, and they actually kind of hit like a truck. Maybe I need to do some upgrades to my health or armor, but if I fight a couple of these things, I think they'll probably wreck me. It turns out Dr. Cavallino's lab is locked, so now I need to get a key card to get into his lab. Going back to that security station, I can actually see exactly where Calvino is, and it turns out he's actually dead outside of an airlock, which is lovely. So apparently I need to find a way to get outside the ship and fly over to his dead body in 0G. So the game tells me I need to find a propulsion system from somewhere in the lab and then get out through an airlock. Around this point we hit our first puzzles, and it's pretty obvious that the glue gun here is going to be a winner. Basically I can use it to put out fires or electrical shorts as well as make ladders to move vertically. I use it to get up on top of an impassable area, and Morgan finds his schematics to make his 0G propulsion. Right next to it is a fabricator, so I slap it together and jump out the airlock right behind us, so it's off into space. The space piece is pretty sweet, and you can actually really zoom around and see the damaged satellite. Our dead doctor is right next to us, so a quick scoot over and I've got his key card, which means we can get back into the station and go to his lab. Heading into his lab, a quick server boot allows me to get my video equipment back up and running, and I can head back to Morgan's office and finish my video. Getting back to my office, I can finally resume my video, and Morgan in the video tells me that I have to blow up Talos 1 in order to fix everything, and that my shitty brother Alex is probably going to try and stop me. But at least now I get to meet January, who turns out is just a flying robot. He tells me that I have to use 2 army keys to blow up the station, and that those army keys are held by myself and my brother Alex. Apparently my key is in deep storage, so the first order of business is I gotta get down there and get my key. To proceed further, we have to find something called a Psychoscope, which thankfully is actually pretty close to where we are right now. But this little sucker allows us to scan our enemies. If we scan enough of them, we get a new perk to buy with our Neuromods. Essentially, this is how we're going to end up using the power of the aliens that really fucked up the station to, I guess, destroy the station or something. At this point, I'm getting a pretty distinct 50% Dead Space, 50% Bioshock vibe right now. But these Neuromods are pretty cool. To get my way down to what's called the guts section, I find myself blocked off because there's a test in progress. Hitting the button on this computer, the Weaver back here comes alive and turns his body into some lightning phantom thing. I should point out at this point in the game that I'm feeling really underpowered, to the point where I've checked to make sure that my difficulty isn't set to some nightmare or max setting. Ammunition seems pretty scarce, and my pistol doesn't seem to do much damage. It's kind of a nice tension, and hopefully it keeps going throughout the game. I should also point out that scanning these Typhon with the Psychoscope has given me 3 new trees for my Neuromods: Energy, Morph, and Telepathy. I'm going to delve into Energy a bit to help kill some of these aliens, but the other ones give some pretty cool looking perks as well. Close to here, I meet my first live human, who's actually a prisoner convicted of murder and human trafficking. The game gives me the option to let him go, or I can release a mimic, and then the mimic eats him, and then I can harvest the mimics for organic materials, which, I'm obviously going to do because I like taking the evil path in these kind of games.
Yeah! You! I told you not to do it! Oh, shit!
Heading forward towards the Arboretum, there's a long zero-G sequence through the bowels of the ship. I kind of take back what I said earlier about the zero-G. It actually really sucks. I'm really starting to hate it because the movement's really annoying and you kind of bounce around on the walls. Plus, they throw in some of these Typhons that just shoot you randomly or shoot exploding things at you. It's really not that enjoyable a mechanic, to be honest. Thankfully, not too much longer later, Morgan makes his way to the Arboretum, which is a completely different style change, and it's pretty welcome. We've got some trees and plants all over, I'm guessing for the station's oxygen production. Running through here, we make it down to deep storage, and surprise, surprise, the door is locked, and we have to get to another side quest to get to open it. This time, we have to go get voice samples from some lady to create a correct passphrase. It seems like this is kind of Prey's favorite story method. Put something behind a locked door and have Morgan jump through hoops to get the door open. I guess it makes sense since we're on a derelict space station, but it is a little bit annoying. Anyway, on to the crew quarters. Down in the crew quarters, we actually encounter a whole bunch of mind-controlled crew members, but our new handy-dandy disruptor pistol makes short work of them. Heading through the crew area, there's a survivor named Mitchell who's reaching out to us over the broadcasting speakers. Apparently he's a cook in the cafeteria, and he wants us to come help him or something. On the way there, we actually encounter a damn telepath, which keeps destroying me because I have no health kits and no ammunition at this point. Finally, I do get him down, and the cook congratulates me by asking me to run to his room and grab his cooking award or something. I also have to find some more of these audio pieces to make the key code, so I do what he's asked. Finally, after looking around the crew quarters long enough, I find all of the audio files I need to be able to make this key code. Morgan turns around and heads back towards storage, but as I leave the crew quarters, I encounter a giant Typhon called a Nightmare. Now, I think I'm supposed to run past this thing, but instead he kind of just sits in front of the exit to the crew quarters and maybe sit there for a couple of minutes while I figured out what to do. He kept shooting me with these psi bombs, and I really couldn't seem to do any damage to him. I really dislike unkillable enemies in games, so I hope this doesn't become something permanent that I gotta run away from the whole time. But I did make it past him and down into the deep storage. As soon as I go through the door into deep storage, however, Alex calls me up all bitchy and decides to lock me down here. I'm not really that upset because at least now finally I can get the blueprints and put together my part of the detonation key. And right after I put it together, the girl who I actually used to create the key code to get in here, Danielle, calls me, apparently she's still alive, and tells me that the crazy chef I was talking to earlier is actually some sort of imposter, and he killed her girlfriend. So she's going to let me out so that I can go take care of him. Her genius plan is to shoot me out of an airlock with some dead hard drives, which I guess is how they get rid of trash in the future. One of the hard drives managed to smack me in the face and knock me out. At this point, I have an annoying zero-G sequence again, and I'm really, really hating these zero-Gs because, like I said before, the controls suck, but finally I get inside of the cargo area. Inside of here, I meet a bunch of folks that are still alive, including the captain herself, where I think I should pause here and show you one of my gripes with the game. Now, I know this is an older game, but the voice and the speaking of your character models really doesn't sync up at all, and this captain is maybe the worst one here. You can see that her mouth doesn't move through the first half of the conversation and then barely syncs up towards the end. Oh well, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it is pretty bad. So our captain here wants me to help her get some defenses in order to open the cargo bay B door, which is apparently the only way to get to where Alex's arming key is. So I have to go to work to get the fabricator and put some turrets together to have some sort of firepower, because apparently there's an army of these things on the other side of the wall. This seems a little bit pointless because my plan is actually to blow up the space station anyway with all these people on it. But I still go together and put together a couple of fabricated turrets for them, set them up, and get ready for the onslaught. My turrets do a pretty badass job mowing down everything. And it's probably actually a good point to mention something that I didn't earlier. Apparently, if you use too many of those Typhon Neuromods, the turrets stop seeing you as human and will start shooting you. I actually learned that the hard way a little bit earlier and had to reload. I think I'm going to stick with weapon-enhancing Neuromods for the time being, and maybe on a different playthrough I'll try some of the Typhon ones, but the turrets are a pain in the ass and I don't really want to deal with them shooting me. Moving on to the next section, some lady calls me and tells me that Supposedly, if I reboot the station's reactor, it's going to remove the lockdowns that Alex put in place. So I guess my plan is to go down to the power plant and figure out that whole mess. There does seem to be quite a lot of these go from A to B positions in this game. I'm not sure if it's really a fair criticism because it is kind of, what the game is, but it seems a little boring doing this over and over again, moving from one location to the next just to move on to the next location and without actually finally finishing up my goals. Morgan heads down to the reactor control room, only to find out that, surprise, surprise, the door is not going to open. This time, a nearby Typhon is actually controlling it. So using our parkour skills, Morgan gets up to an access panel above the nearby water treatment area. Inside is a telepath, as we expected, and killing it and turning the power back on allows us to go back to the entrance to the power reactor area. Thankfully, I get into the reactor and head past a few more phantoms to a door leading actually into the reactor. And guess what? It's locked. And I have to find a supervisor to get their keycard. I swear Morgan Yu is supposed to be one of the guys in charge of the entire station, so why the hell can't I get into all these places? Maybe the devs realize that they are playing the keycard angle a bit hard because, thankfully, the dead gal we're looking for is actually literally right next to the door. Starting the reactor restart sequence, I bet you'd be as shocked as I was to see that it doesn't work as expected, and we have to run into the reactor to fix something. After that fun ordeal, the power is restored, and we have full access to the station again. Alex calls us to basically give up and invites us to his office so he can explain his entire story. This is where the developers decide to ramp up the annoying level of this game. Basically, the station seems to be falling apart after that reboot, so half of the walkways and ladders leading around the area are destroyed. This means that I have to do my parkour to get from one handhold to the next. The game also throws a room filled with explosive gas at me filled with phantoms, so I can't shoot any and I basically just have to run and jump and get away as fast as I can. Eventually, we make it down to the Arboretum, and we head to our brother's office. For starters, he's got a way nicer office than us with a view. I'm not sure how that happened, but he points us to another video inside of his office to watch. Basically, the video just proves what I was already kind of thinking. Everything was Morgan's idea, and Alex is just basically doing what he's told. Apparently, there's something called a null wave that we can use to reverse all the Typhon damage instead of just blowing up the station. And to be able to get the null wave, all I need to do is scan a few sections of that coral stuff, the yellow weaver type stuff. Thankfully, the game knows just how much I love the 0G sections, so it forces me to go outside the station to scan the two sections of coral. Neither of these are really intuitive to find, and it's a great way for what I'm assuming is the close of this game. That's heavy sarcasm. This 0G shit completely sucks. Out here, Alex lets me know that the board of directors has actually gotten wind of something going on, and they're unhappy, so they're sending in a ship to stop us from doing what we're doing. Anyway, back to Alex's office, and Morgan uploads the coral to the PC to create the null wave. However, the board of directors just decides to take over the station, and now everything is filled with military robots that are actually quite a bit stronger than anything we've dealt with before. To turn off the board's control of the station, I have to go to the command shuttle and turn off their computers or something. Getting to the command shuttle, it's completely empty, but I find a pre-recorded transmission where apparently Morgan and Alex's father authorized them to come in and murder all of us. Pretty nice family. But the ship's computer lets me know that the tech officer I need to get rid of is actually now down in the hardware labs, so now I get to run all the way down to the hardware labs to take care of him. I'm pretty sure this is the end of the game, and it's still making me just run back and forth all over the place, which, fun fact, isn't fun. I take care of the tech officer, and then I have to kill the guy who's actually controlling everything. His name is Dahl. It turns out that he's actually in the Arboretum trying to get into the safe house where Alex is sitting. I get down there. They give me a minute and a half basically to run and stop him. I took 2 shotgun blasts to the head, and he's dead. Finally meeting Alex in person, he promises me the arming key, but he tries to convince me that we can handle the Typhon and get everything back on track by using that null wave. But in the middle of his speech, actually a giant Typhon attacks the station and kills the gravity, which, yay, more 0G. I grab Alex's key from his unconscious body, and I've actually already decided I'm going to blow the fuck out of the station because I'm tired of this shit. Running past everything and down to the reactor, Morgan primes the 2 keys, and now we're told that we have to go all the way up to the bridge to actually detonate it, which is more running back and forth. Come on, seriously, game. To be honest, I just want to finish the game now. Running all the way to the bridge isn't enjoyable in any way at all. Just need to finish it. Finally, Morgan hits the button, and boom, roll credits. Actually, just kidding. Right after the credits, we wake up in a chair with Alex Yu discussing us. The game is making us believe that we're actually a Tython, and our morality is questioned based on the decisions we made in the game. Apparently, I was a pretty good guy generally, but basically, Alex puts Morgan's memories into a Typhon to see if it's a real person. Not really sure the logic here, but I'm given two options. I can kill them all, or I can take Alex's hand. So you know what? Fuck everyone. They're all gonna die. I get a neato cutscene of me murdering him, and then the game's finally over. Now I get to see my stats in the game, and as you can see here, yes, I did drop down the story at one incredibly obnoxiously difficult spot, so don't judge. Okay, well, now that I've played it, let's go over my thoughts on this game. I'll give you guys a few broad categories to go over, the first of which, I guess, is sound. There's nothing really amazing here, the music didn't wow me, and the guns and aliens were nothing to write home about, but I can't really complain. Nothing specifically stands out, but it did what it was supposed to do. Sound was fine. Next are controls. For the first person side, there's no aiming down the sights, which feels really weird to me at this point in my gaming career, but otherwise everything felt pretty crisp. The two main issues I have with control in this game are A, the 0G movement. It's a total clusterfuck, and I really didn't enjoy it. And the second is actually the way the game handles backing out of menus. Sometimes the game wants you to right click, at least on the PC, to get out of menus, yet other times you just look away. So basically when you're looking at a computer, you can turn away from it, or sometimes the game puts you in a menu where you have to right click to get out. However, right click is also mapped to my Typhon powers, so there's quite a few times where I'd right click to thinking get off of a PC, and I'd end up using a whole bunch of my side powers. It's kind of stupid. Maybe I could have remapped it, but that was a bit of a pain. Now for overall gameplay, it's all pretty enjoyable. The RPG elements are pretty good with being able to hack and move objects around through my perks. That said, the crafting isn't really anything amazing. In general, crafting in this game is basically the same thing as the game just giving me items that I'd sell for some sort of currency, and then buy ammunition or medkits that I want to use. I'm not really making anything special with the crafting, basically just more ammo for the guns that I want. Using the Typhon powers was pretty cool, and the glue gun adds actually a pretty neat element to get around the map. But what this game doesn't do well is a lot of those parkour elements. When you need to get up high, sometimes your character doesn't register the glue spot well and you fall, so you're retrying over and over again. Also, as I've mentioned several times in this video, the 0G aspects of this game just suck. They really weren't fun, and I could have enjoyed the game so much more if they just really weren't included at all. My last big gameplay gripe is kind of the way the game completely forces you to get a keycard to go to the next story area over and over and over again. It's the biggest common thread throughout the entire game, and really it starts to get a little tiresome. I understand the need to lock some things behind walls, but it's a little ridiculous. I mean, come on. Which brings me to the story of the game, and I have to admit that I am disappointed. The game starts out with a really awesome narrative where you're in an experimental Groundhog Day type thing, only to have a Typhon leak break the cycle. This really is basically the end of the mystery, and then the rest of the game is just a race to blow up the station. That's it. Nothing new, nothing interesting, just running around trying to get the arming keys. This little segment at the end where it reveals that I'm actually a Typhon kind of really makes no sense and wasn't even hinted at throughout the entire game. Maybe the beginning sequence was to show that you're actually a Typhon pretending to be human, but that tiny cutscene at the end really doesn't bring everything home. Maybe I'm being far too critical of the story, but whatever. I'm really not that impressed. Not great. So, overall, what do I think about this game? Well, in the beginning of this video, I mentioned that in the last 5 years, this game has basically disappeared from popular culture. And to be honest, I think that's pretty well deserved. I'm a huge fan of RPGs and I love sci-fi, so this should have been right up my alley. But at the end of my almost 17-hour playthrough, I was actually having trouble wanting to finish this thing. The game starts out pretty awesome with a cool alien premise, but all the repetition and boring aspects really overran any real enjoyment. If you asked me to recommend a good RPG or a good sci-fi game, this wouldn't be one I'd go to. If it's a few bucks on Steam, maybe you should try it out, but I really don't think anyone needs to go out of their way to play Prey. So, anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.